So there was a paralytic at the Pools of Bethesda, and these pools were for cleansing. They're part of the Jewish tradition. I think they're used to wash animals for sacrifice or something like that. And it was said that from time to time, an angel would come and stir the waters, trouble the waters, and the first person into the waters after that would be healed. And Jesus came to the cleansing pools at Bethesda, and there was a paralytic man there who had been there for 38 years, and that man said that because he was paralyzed, he was unable to lower himself into the waters when an angel had stirred them. So he just presumably been sitting there, looking into the waters, reflecting, and wishing he could be, wishing he could walk, but not being able to actualize that desire. And he told this to Jesus, and Jesus didn't say, "Okay, I'll just cure you." He said, "Do you want to be made whole?" And I guess the answer was yes, and only because he answered affirmatively was he healed. And I thought a lot about three aspects of this. The 38 years is important. It's a reference to, according to a priest I'm familiar with in the Orthodox Church, it's a reference to the followers of Moses who wandered in the desert 38 years and were unable to enter the promised land. They wandered for 40 years, but I think about 2 years into their journey, they had to face this same question: do you really want to take on the identity? Do you really want to become what you need to become to be made whole, to be what you're meant to be? Because the thing about it is, you have to pick up your cross and follow Christ to do that. You have to leave the slavery of your former life behind. You have to have a desire for transformation, which means you have to die to your old self. You have to leave behind what was enslaving you. And what's really enslaving us is our passions, our desires to serve ourselves. And you have to change, and you have to desire to serve others. So being whole means being complete. That's what being holy is being whole. And when you're complete, then you're like Christ. And Christ included everybody. He was willing to suffer for others, including those who cursed him, those who wished death upon him. And only when everyone is included in your love are you holy. And that's how he's able to reverse the curse of death, because he turns curses into blessings. He he blesses those who curse him. And that's hard to do. You could be stuck on the threshold of becoming for 38 years and still not become if you don't commit to what it takes. You have to walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk. So when he decided that he wanted to be made whole, Jesus said, "Now get up and walk." The time for talk is over, and the time for action is upon you. And I think that's what's happening with the angel. It's like a messenger from God stirs something up in you. A lot of times people find when they get to the end of themselves, when they get to rock bottom, when they realize that there's no such thing as self-sufficiency. You can't just care about yourself and be fulfilled. You can't be fully human if you only care about yourself. You have to include everybody, and also the future and the past in your love. You have to honor those who came before you, serve others, and sacrifice for others, and you have to see the future that is meant for you and align with it, right? You need to become like Christ. That's our purpose on earth. That's the image we were created in. So the followers of Moses, actually, they longed for the comfort and consistency of slavery. They actually were still attached to where they came from, and that desire was stronger than their faith. They, even though they had experienced miracles that God makes a way for you, right? He split the Red Sea, and they still couldn't manage to commit and to become. And because there's a lot of energy and sacrifice that goes into breaking through the threshold of something. So that entire generation had to die, actually, before the Israelites were able to enter the Promised Land. I always forget what if you call them that before they entered Israel, but you can see this in many places. There were actually pagan gods of the threshold. There are many times when you get up to the place you need to be, but maybe you get cold feet, or your faith isn't strong enough that you're willing to let go of what you need to let go of to become what you need to be. And you'll see that there's even an expression of this in physics, when water is going from gas form to liquid form. Even if you keep the amount of energy going into it steadily, the temperature will stop changing, and all that energy is going into a state change. And only if you reach the tipping point will it actually change to a liquid. But it's easy to lose faith when you're in a situation like that, because you're not making progress visibly. It requires faith. And in the process of letting go of everything, maybe you've let go of some things, but you're not seeing results, and this can be demoralizing. So these stories are helpful, and you can see many other examples, like when a rocket ship is taking off the ground. It puts a lot of energy in without actually lifting off the ground, but it's kind of getting less and less heavy until finally it is the balance shifts, and the amount of thrust is higher than the amount of inertial confinement. And actually, by the way, when the water changes forms, the vapor changes states, there's actually an explosion of light. And when a sperm breaks through the wall of an egg, there's a burst of light. And it is believed that when Christ resurrected, there was a burst of light that produced the Shroud of Turin. So I think that's all really fascinating, that you can see this pattern in many places. So the 38 years is really interesting. Yeah, they were too attached to the slavery, and it cost them 38 years. They couldn't enter the promised land with just, even if you have all of the parts, but you don't have everything included in the parts. Like, you don't have the purpose, like the living spirit, the reason for existence. If that's not present as well, then you're not whole, and you can't enter the promised land. You need so the missing ingredient, I think, is love, which is sacrifice, being willing to suffer for others, and loving all of God's creation, loving all of the others, and all for all time, and being able to being willing to let go of everything that is for you in order to serve God, because it means you're recognizing that God is in all of creation. It's the source of good, and that's what makes you holy. That's what makes you complete. So he asks, do you want to be made whole? So that's a question we have to ask ourselves, is, do we really want to be made whole? And it reminds me a lot of someone else who was 38 at the time that they said this, and it's Martin Luther King, and it's my favorite quote. This produced a lot of fruit in me for a long time before I found out that this is part of the Christian ethos. Martin Luther King said, you may be 38 years old, as I am now, when you're called to serve some great principle, to stand up for some great cause, and you may shrink away from that calling because you want to save your job or save your life or live in comfort. And you may go on to be 90 years old, but you'll be just as dead at 90 as you were at 38. Because, and he said that the cessation of your breath would be a belated announcement of the earlier death of your spirit. And I realize that that's basically the same question. King also says the greatest question in life is, what do you do for others? So I think that's really powerful. And I also noticed that I recently discovered what I think is the meaning of the stirring of the waters. The troubling of the waters means that you need to be disturbed from your restful, comfortable state. You need to um, fast, and only when you're hungry will you recognize the food that's all around you. If you're in the wilderness, there's plenty of edible plants, but you won't notice them if you're well fed. If you're attending to all kinds of other things, you won't be able to see the things that can make you whole. So the troubling of the waters is like tilling your field. If you have soil that is fixed in its ways, it needs to be broken and turned over and made ready for new seeds. And the threshold is like you plant your seed, and you tend to your garden every day, and you feed it water, and you give it love and attention and nutrients, but you have to have faith. You have to hope that the seed is able to break through the surface. But in tilling the field, you're making that, you're creating the condition for that. You're working towards wholeness. So that's the question we all have to ask ourselves: is do you want to be made whole? Are you ready to commit to what that requires?